Hi, this is Cheryl St.Pierre, and in this video, we will be making these coiled spring earrings, version number 2. Now, I've chosen silver colored wire, and I will explain that a little bit later as to why I picked that. But for now, let's look at the supplies and tools that you will need. And so to start with, the supplies, get this so you can do a snapshot. Okay, so I'm using 20 gauge wire. It's dead soft wire, but I have enamel coated wire, which it's the permanent colored wire. I've got, and 20 gauge is 0.81 millimeters. So 2 pieces that are 7.5 inches long, and that's 18.75 centimeters. 2 pieces that are 4 inches long, and that is 10 centimeters. And 2 pieces that are 5 inches long, and that's 12.5 centimeters. Now that 4-inch pieces are to make head pins. So if you choose to use different head pins for this, then you wouldn't need that wire. Okay, and then for the 28 gauge, which is a 0.32 millimeters or around there. Anyways, I find they have varying sizes with that. Let's see, mine says it's 0.3. And yeah, so, and yet I went to a chart on the internet. I printed it off a long time ago, and they wrote 0.32. So anything that's around there will be the right size. And you're going to need your ear wires of choice. Now, I made mine right out of with the coated wire, because that coating makes it hypoallergenic. So a lot of people are looking for that, but you could do sterling silver because it would definitely go with this. I chose the coated wire because I didn't want it to tarnish. So that's what's nice about coated wire. I've used 4mm bicones, 4 for each earring, so a total of 8 of them. And I have a teardrop bead on mine that is rather delicate and small. So I encourage you to choose your own bead drop. You can follow mine precisely, or, do it your own way. And so mine is a 10 by 7 millimeter teardrop. Okay, for tools, it's pretty basic. Again, most of mine are. You need a 7 millimeter diameter pencil, and that is our mandrel for making the spring. And so it's more important to be exact for the pencil size with this earring than it was the other earring. You need a round nose pliers, chain nose pliers, your flush cutters or snips, and I do recommend getting the kind that's like this, shaped like this, to get into those small places. Now these are just inexpensive ones. You can find, if they look like this, they're going to do the job. And you can get them really inexpensive. They last and last and last. I mean, they do wear out, but they're inexpensive enough that to replace them is not an issue. So that's what I recommend. I don't recommend the $100 snips. I honestly don't. Okay, so let's go on. I just wanted to talk about the earring a little bit. My prototype I did with copper. Oops, I got wire here. I did with copper, and then I started thinking about it. I'm going, okay, this is going to tarnish. And I don't know if I would like the look of these with tarnished wire. I suppose I could have oxidized to find out if I liked it or not. But so I chose to go with the silver. And because in order to prevent these from tarnishing, I'd have to spray coat them with enamel. And I've got really sparkly beads here. I did not want to ruin that sparkle with spray painting it with enamel. So that's why I chose enamel coated wire. So I don't have to worry about it. Even sterling silver would still tarnish. And I mean, there's a dip that you can use that you just stick it in. But you know what happens is the silver turns yellow within minutes of being out of that dip. And then it tarnishes super fast. So you'd have to dip them every time you wore them. And so, I mean, that is a prerogative. You can do that. But I don't know. These are going to last for years. I've made jewelry out of this wire and had it last. I've got some that are 10 and 12 years old and they still look like the day I made them. So you can always prevent a little bit of tarnish by storing them in a sealed Ziploc bag. You can sell moisture absorbing pack. You can use moisture absorbing packets in the Ziploc bag for even better prevention. You can see when you buy items, they got that little, I think, is it called silica? Anyways, it's little packets that keep things dry. You can keep them, store them, save them for your jewelry. They work. Or you can go and buy, sometimes they're little black squares. You know, in a rock and gem shop, they'll have those things that you can buy. And, you know, but why not? If you can get them for free, don't become a pack rat, but you can store a few of those in advance for when you need them. Okay. Oh, one other thing I wanted to say during the video, I comment that I felt like I needed to work hard in the wire because it was so, it's a softer wire than even copper. And the finished product, I'm quite impressed. It's probably because of the coiling and the springing. It's actually quite durable. But if you were to sell these and mail them away, I would definitely recommend putting them in a box because going through the mail will break, you know, squish it. And you don't want to do that. So I would definitely always have them in a box for shipping. Okay, so I think that's everything I needed to say. And let's move on and make these earrings. Okay, so I want you to take one of your 20 gauge wires, that's the 7.5 inch length, and we want to work harden it a little bit because it's extra soft, softer than copper. So I'm not going to go crazy work hardening it because we do want it some degree soft, but a little bit. Well, it also helps that it's straightened too. And then just like in the other tutorial, we're going to make a P-loop on the end. The tutorial of the version 1 is what I'm referring to. And so that part is very similar. Okay, so got that. And now I'm going to take my 28 gauge wire. And again, this is going to be very similar to the other pair of earrings in the spring format. Now I chose to use the silver enameled wire for this because with the crystals, because they're so, I got the extra sparkly ones with this pair of earrings. I didn't want oxidized copper with it, and in order to make the copper not oxidize, I'd have to spray in paint, you know, spray enamel coat it, and I didn't want to dull the crystals, so I don't know if it would be good or not. So I'm going to start with 5 wraps, got my tail to hang on to, and now I've got the measurements as if it was copper because I did my prototype in copper and it's gorgeous. But then when I thought, how am I going to make that copper stay that color without ruining the beads? So I would imagine the dark copper would look good too. So that's be a personal preference, but I chose to go with the silver that's not going to oxidize. So this is the wire that would be best for that. Okay, so I'm guessing we won't use as much of this wire, but The 28 gauge, I'm sure you know already, it's 5.5 feet per earring. 10. Now, I just thought of it now, is this won't slide as easily. So, it's still sliding fairly good. When it gets longer, it might not, though. So, we'll just, so it's not as tight. Try not to wind too tight, because that'll make it tighter on the wire itself in the final. And if we have a little bit of distance, let's see if it shows. Little bit, that's too much actually. Little bit of distance, it's going to make it looser around the wire. If that makes sense to you? Because as we compress it, it actually is going to get a little bit bigger. And I'm actually pushing it against my pliers like that. You don't want to go too long or else it won't work for you. 15 wraps is my number, go-to number. Oh, I'm gonna quit there because I started getting too far apart. Okay, so I'm just going to continue on. I'd like you to do the same for both. We want to coil 6 inches. This time we're doing a measurement. So 6 inches, and there's a reason for that, and you will see that later. So yeah, so do 6 inches of coiling. Try to be fairly exact because you want your earrings to look similar. And then I'll see you when we're done. Okay, so I have both of mine wrapped now, and I realized I could have work hardened it even more. So if you haven't started yours already, yeah, just give it some more work hardening. And now, as far as getting them to be the same length of wrapping, you need to really compress super hard. So I'm holding the end of the wire and pushing towards the loop, sliding it all the way to the loop. And that's when the measurement of 6 inches should happen. And every time I do it, it comes out a little bit different. So this was now showing just slightly under 6 inches. So, but I'm going to leave it at that because I virtually have no tail left on mine. So if you wanted to give yourself another inch of weaving wire, that's your prerogative. I'm gonna, when they're both cinched up as tight as can be, they're the same length. That's what's crucial. I like the 6 inch length because of the way it works on the pencil. So that's what we're gonna do next is, well, we're gonna snip off these ends up here because it's easier to do it now than later on. So snip it off as close to the wire as possible. And if you can, crimp it in. Okay, so then I'm just thinking, should we do this? Why don't we do this tail as well? Before I didn't do it right now, but it won't hurt to do it right now. Probably be easier. Crimp it in. Okay, now that's done. Now it's time to take your pencil and we'll make our spring. So you've got the P loop and you've got the P facing towards the pencil. And now if you saw the other tutorial, I'm actually making the spring a little bit finer, a little bit closer together. And if you want me to measure the approximate distance, see, this is even closer, so I'm going to want it a little closer than that. Actually, I'll do a measurement once I have it all done for the total. Because once it's like this, you can compress this coil, the spring, a little bit more. Okay, so it's a little bit uneven. This wire bent on me here for some reason. Never had that happen before. Okay, so then you want to fine tune your spring where you can visually see where it's wider or closer, and we want it to be much the same. And I'm thinking I wanted it a little bit closer than that. But you want it to have room for your head pin and your 4 bicones to have room that it's not going to touch the bottom of your spring. Because if it does, then it's too short. And it's best to get the length pretty accurate on your pencil. It's just easier. Okay, so I think that's okay. It's a springier wire than copper is for sure, but not that much more. Okay. Yeah, I'd say that's pretty close. Okay. Now it's going to be hard to measure because it ends differently, but the measurement I will do for you is from here to here, and so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, well, 6 if you count this, wraps. Let's grab the ruler. I'm gonna give it to you in millimeters because it's more accurate. And it's just shy of 2 centimeters. So it's actually like 19 millimeters. So in there should be good. Okay, so now we can take it off the pencil, and then we want to do the exact same thing for the second one. Now, at this point, you could choose to reverse your spring, but I honestly don't think it makes a difference for these earrings to be mirrored. Whoops, sorry. Okay, so now I kinked up this one when I was coiling, and that's why I recommend not doing too many coils at a time, because then you can have the accident of kinking your wire. get them nice and even. Let's see if they're the same length now. Or actually, let's measure it. See, it needs to be compressed a little bit more. Now it's about the same, but now I'm going to double check that I've got them all fairly. Because I think what happened is it just compressed in one area. I measure it again. And now it's still too long. So I'm just going to compress the whole thing like this. There, hey, that worked out. I'm going to take it off, see what it looks like off. It's more forgiving off the pencil than on the pencil, if that makes sense. Okay, so the next thing we're going to do is we are going to make the head pins to put the bicones on. Now you could either use purchased ones or you could make your own with a spiral head pin. I'll go ahead and make a spiral head pin, and I have to quickly cut some wire for that. Okay, so I don't know why I didn't think of doing that. So I've got my 4.5 inch length of wire. And the first thing we're going to do is take our ruler, and we're using metric again. And we're going to bend it out 1 centimeter. Might as well do to both of them at the same time. Okay. And I'm going to make that a sharper corner. Okay, so now I'm going to make my spiral. Of course, if you're using store-bought head pins, you don't need to do this. So I'm going to make my tight little half loop, crimp it in. It's fighting me. That's crazy. Okay, so I might end up with a bit of an airspace there. Being difficult. There we go. Okay, that looks much better. Okay, and then you go until it is centered over top of the wire. And that is done. Okay, so go ahead and make your second one if you're making it. Okay, so I have both of them done, and now I'm just going to make sure that they're straight, and it'll work harden the wire as well. I'm not pressing hard because I don't want to mar the wire too much either, but enough to straighten it and give it a little bit of sturdiness. Okay, so 4.5 inches might have been a little bit long, but it helps. It makes it easier to work with. So now I'm going to just put on 4 bicones. Now I've chosen completely clear, no ABS on mine. ABS. No, oh man, my head is, no coatings, just clear crystals. Okay, so then the next thing to do is take your, now it's ready to go, but I want you to look at the top of your spring. Now the top is without this, and we're going to grab this and center it, and I'm pushing pressure against here, because if I don't, it's going to go straight over there, if that makes sense. So I am, with my pliers, putting pressure this way, with my thumb just like supporting it, I guess is more like it, putting pressure, just holding it into place. And then I'm trying to curve it like that. And I want to get that loop center. And then we also have to make sure it's flat so that it sits right. So you have to visually judge center. And then you also need to make sure it's flat this way, which can be challenging. But you know what? We can fine tune that later as well. Because when you've got your beads on and you've got the loop made, you'll be able to see whether it's sitting level or not. And then it's just a trial and error thing where you just adjust it till you're happy with it. Okay, so now I'm putting this in there. And I can't show it to you, but right now you can see fairly well whether it's sitting right or not. A bicone is more forgiving than a flat bead, but you still want the beads to be going straight, as straight as possible down the center. Now mine's pretty good. Yours might need more adjusting. If it does, I recommend taking it off and then adjusting it. So just until you're happy with it. And you know what? When you're working with it, you might end up bending it again. So once where you think it's fairly good, then it's time to decide the spiral. Do you want it facing so it's like this, or do you want the spiral to show? I chose, with my earrings, I chose for it to be this way. So to go hang on the on your ear wire, you need the loop going left, well, flat this way. So whatever look you want, you have to do the opposite. Excuse me. You'll figure it out, because once you have to do it ahead of time, you have to figure it out ahead of time, because once it's done, you can't fix it, you can't adjust it. So, I mean, it'll probably look good whether you adjust it or not. So I've got the beads tied up against that loop, not putting pressure on it, just so that it's firm. I'm going to actually put my thumb in there a little bit. Nope, that won't help. Okay, so I'm going to hold it like this. So I've got it pulled fairly tight, but not tight enough to bend the wire. And I'm going to take my pliers. Let's see, it's like that. I want my loop going the opposite direction. Okay, so the reason I'm putting a space in there between the loop is we want it to have freedom of movement. And that's, okay, so I've bent it like that. So it's going to have that much movement. And so the spring can spin around, and that's what you want. And we have to be consistent with both of them. So if you wanted to, right now, you could do the same for the next one. Figure out where it was on your pliers, and then do the same for the other one right away. So you're going to take your head pin, put your 4 beads on, but I'm not going to do that right now because you've already seen me do that. Okay, so now I'm going to make the loop. Okay, so that's all I got. And you got to pay attention to what size of loop you are, because because you want the loop to be the same on both. Okay, and we want the loop to be nice and neat as well. And it's I see that it's pulling to the side there, so I'm going to hold it here, fix it. Say, just straighten the wire like that. That's important to do beforehand, because you won't have anything to hang on to do it. And then snip it right there. And then it's almost a closed loop. And then I'm going to take my round nose pliers and close that loop, because we want to try and keep this neat. And when we put it onto the ear wires, hopefully you'll have ear wires that you can open and close the loop. I mean, if not, you can use this one. It's just you have a better chance of messing up your spring in there. It's a perfect little neat loop. Okay. So the bicones, when you have it pulled all the way like this, like it would be when it's hanging, this has to be higher than the end of the coiling. So that's important. That's how you can tell if your length is good or not. And yeah, that'll virtually be what you need to look for when you're making your earrings. Okay, so that's done. And I am going to now go ahead with the next step. Well, I'll catch up the other earrings and be right back. I just want to say that for making the head pins and the instructions later on, because I do that part afterwards, I'm actually going to shorten this wire for the head pins, because look at all that waste. Mind you, it makes a perfect scrap for other projects. So that's up to you whether you wanted to go with 4.5 inches for it, but I think it could easily be 4 or 3.5. Yeah, 3.5 would probably be okay as well. Okay, so I have that one made and snipped, and I think it needed a little bit of adjustment, so I figured I'm going to show you that in case that ends up happening to you. So it didn't make a very nice loop. I don't know, did I maybe make the wire too long? What did I do? You know, I'm thinking, I don't know. I'm going to try closing up the head with the round nose pliers carefully. See if that helps. It did. Okay, so that's all it was. It just looked wonky to me. Anyways, there. And now I'm going to hold it, and it's sitting good. Okay, so the next step is you're going to make a loop at the end of the coiling. Right there. We don't have much excess. I thought I'd have more than that. I'm not sure. Well, that's going to be enough. That's going to be enough. It won't waste that much. So we don't want to mess with the coiling. We don't want to wreck the coiling. So you're going to take your round nose pliers and just put it right up to the coil. Have that hold it in place, and then you're going to take this stem carefully and try and make a loop without touching the spring, because we don't want to damage the shape. Okay, so that's all I want you to do. And then I want you to snip it off right there. Oh, come on, go into focus there. Okay, and now it's open. Now we want to close it. And yes, we're going to close it first. Taking the round nose pliers might be easier, but you got to support the spring because we don't want to bend the spring. Okay, so I have it closed. And now, don't worry about being level that way because we're going to change it. We want to bend it this way, like this. And I'm supporting the coil so that I don't misshape it. And now we are going to center that the same way we centered this, but it's going to be slightly different because we don't have a loop to look at. We just want the straight part of that loop to be in the center. So it can be a little tricky. Got to grab it right. Okay, and now I'm putting pressure against here to support it, and trying to curve the wire. See, it got a sharp curve, but don't worry about that because we're not going to see it. And actually that makes it, that's just fine as long as we have that loop centered down the center of your spring. And it is more forgiving to be off on this one than this one. So if it's not perfect, don't worry about it. It's not going to show on the final product. Okay, so we've got that. Now you just want to make sure that it visually looks pleasing still, not deformed here, which it can do for you. So I'm just going around checking. And it looks okay. So I'm going to go ahead and do my next one. Okay, so I have both complete. That's what the bottoms look like. And here, I'll put them so you can compare. This one's got a tighter corner. That's okay. Yeah, it's what does it look like this? And they're both fine. And this one looks a little bit open, so I'm just going to tighten that up a little bit. And I'm only squeezing with my pliers on that spur loop. I'm not on the coil at all. Just, so I just went like here and squeezed like that. And then it closed it up. Okay, so the next step is if, of course, you're going to make whatever bead drop you choose to make, but I am just going to show you how I did my bead drop. So we have here 2 5-inch pieces of wire, the 20 gauge, and I want you to take your ruler and measure 2 inches and give it a bend at that 2 inches. And do that for both of them. Okay, so should I put the measurements of these teardrops? These are really sparkly ones. They're beautiful. They're real crystal. Okay, so what we're going to do is, yeah, okay, I believe these, I know these were 10 millimeters long. I think they're millimeters wide. I wrote it. Here, I thought I wrote it down, but maybe I didn't. So I know it was 10. I remember that. It's by 6, 10 by 6 or 7 in there. So, you know, the most important measurement if you're trying to duplicate what I'm doing is the 10 millimeters, because you won't have a choice on how wide they are. Of course, you could put longer ones, and I don't know if wide. Experiment, you know, whatever it is that works for you is the way to go. Okay, so I want to make these 45 degrees, 90 degrees, sorry. Straighten it out a bit. And I'm doing the faux wrap so that my loop is, I can open it and close it, because I don't want to mess around with the loop on here. I've got it to perfection. If I open and close it, I could possibly ruin the spring. We don't want to do that. So that's why I'm doing the faux type of wrap. Now you want the bead on the shorter part of the wire, the 2-inch piece. So I'm going to put, demonstration purposes, mine like this, and it flew off. Okay, and I want one this way and one this way to mirror them, but I want you to know that the coil flips around, so this will flip around as well. So even though you want it to be frontwards, it's not gonna stay that way, and that's okay. That's just the part of the craziness of this earring. Like, it's not exactly your traditional style of earring. Okay, so what I want to do is make a little loop on the bottom. Whoops. Make a little loop on the bottom. So this one's heading to the right, coming down, and this one's heading to the left and coming down. So go up, try to stay in focus. Got my finger supporting the wire and making a little loop. And you want the same size of loop for both of them. But I'm not going to stop it at this point. I'm going to go like that. And now, just a point of interest makes it different. I mean, you could just do a basic head pin type thing. I don't know. I'm known for my swirls. And now I want to do 3 wraps, but I want to try and make them as straight as possible. I noticed that when I made my other one, my prototype, because of the way this wire is here, it made my coils slant. So I don't want to have slanted coils. I want them straight, because it looks neater. And I want 3 of them. And this one doesn't count where the wire is from the loop. And then we want it to end at the back. Okay, and see, they're not perfectly lined up. I'm going to cinch them up together. Easier said than done sometimes. And I'm going to snip it off at the back. And crimp it down. See, that was a nice length of scrap. You know, I've got a little bit more than 1 inch there. That will head in the garbage because you can't use it for anything else. Okay, so that's that one. And you just want to make sure everything's straight. And now I'm going to support the coil with my pliers, and I'm just going to bend it. Let's see, if that was the front, we're going to, how did I do this one? I guess it really doesn't matter because it's going to spin around. Yeah, I made it so that it was going front to back. So I'm going to do that with this one too. But again, that's your decision, how you want to do yours. Make my loop. And snip. And then I'm going to just put it onto the earring. You have to figure out what you want to be the front and what to be the back, and just be consistent with the two, because again, it's going to flip around and it really isn't going to make a difference. But the consistency, I think, is important. Okay, and that one is done. Now, I know the video doesn't show how pretty, and the pictures won't show how pretty these are, but they're very elegant, fun, pretty. You'd never think of a coil earring as being elegant, but these ones pull it off. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing with this one, but because the loop is at the left, got it upside down. I'm going to try and make a similar size of loop, and the bead just wants to move around. And that looks pretty good. Tighten it just a smidge more. And do my coiling. 1, 2. Oh, it really moved up on me there. 3, and end it in the back. Make sure the coils are straight. Okay. And then I'm going to support the coil. Make my loop. Give it a snip. Now, because I got such a big opening, I'm just going to tighten it beforehand a little bit. Makes it that much easier. And then open it up to go onto the spring. Okay, pay attention to how I had this one. Okay, so that's at the back. Yep, there we go. Close the loop, straighten it, make sure it's hanging nice. And I know you can't see that, but it's hanging quite lovely. And then put your ear wires on, and they're done. So I'm going to put my ear wires on. Now remember to open the loop on your ear wires instead of your spring. And frontwards. How did I have it? What's the front? Okay. that's the front. And there they are. The camera showed the sparkle. Okay, and I go ahead and dropped one. There we go. I'd like to say thank you for joining me in this video. Please press the subscribe button, and if you want to help my tutorials, my channel thrive, please consider joining a membership on the join button. I recommend the retired video ones because the membership, because it gives you access to all my older videos that I have retired, so there isn't too many. Well, after 2 years I tend to retire them unless they're BB craft videos. Okay, so God bless, and we will catch you in the next one. Bye for now.